Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about Legos, and we're going to talk about why the click heard around the world is going to be so massively important for Dungeons and Dragons, and how it's really going to catapult Dungeons and Dragons forward much, much faster, right? So, much, much faster than anyone expected, and how the timing is really fantastic. All right, so let's jump into this. So, I've been going really deep on Legos for running Dungeons and Dragons because Legos is now it's about, the click heard around the world will be D&D click, Lego click. These are one spanned product, right? Dungeons and Dragons can be used to tell stories with every single Lego set that's ever been created, right? And because they quite literally click together, and every single miniature is at scale, and every piece of terrain is at scale. And then on the Dungeons and Dragons side, we are getting, so Lego gets the benefit of their sets don't just sit on a shelf anymore, right? Like, everybody can just use Dungeons and Dragons to tell a story about The Office, right? Or a story about Spider-Man and Batman, right? And in addition to that, Dungeons and Dragons gets miniatures and terrain at a scale that has never even been remotely possible for it, right? So this is hugely beneficial on both sides, and I think, and in my humble opinion, this is the reason D&D and Lego clicked their products together, right? So that Lego could stop just being, a shelf piece, and Dungeons and Dragons could massively increase, could set a new level of capability for both miniatures and terrain. But as I went down this, one of the things that really shocked me was I was like, okay, I'm going to start to use Lego to improve my Dungeons and Dragons game and to be ready for when the official Dungeons and Dragons product drops, right? And when I have, the base plates, the miniatures, and the terrain that will span on to every other set that's ever been built, right? Because that's how Legos works, right? And so I could just literally click, the tavern. I could literally just click. I could put the red dragon, that's coming in the sets, back paws on that official D&D set, and the front paws on the Friends set, right in front of Phoebe and Chandler, right? And it's transformative. This is huge. We've never had anything like this. And but once I started, so one, I already own some Legos, right? And then I have a good friend who's a picker, and I got a few more pieces from him. But where this really started to click into place fully is there is a Lego store near me, right? And there are multiple Lego stores near me. And when I started going and buying very specific pieces, it opened my mind, right? And this is, the thing is, Dungeons and Dragons is like nothing that has ever been created by any other human secularly, right? It fundamentally transforms how we think about identity, right? And it fundamentally transforms how people think about narrative, right? Human narrative, right? But Lego, so I was like, oh, these cute little Lego feats, it's going to be so much easier to do terrain and so much easier to do the miniatures. No. What I'm realizing is Lego is just as expansive and just as important as D&D. This is a near-peer relationship, right? Like two nations, or we're near peers, right? The Lego community is absolutely astounding, and it is brilliant, and it is not filled with charismatic, confident, intelligent people. It is filled with intelligent, innovative people, right? And they're like their own thing, right? And so what I think is really interesting is it made me re-question what is Dungeons and Dragons, right? And this question is never far from my mind. And the reason why is I think what Gary accomplished with Dungeons & Dragons is so expansive that this question is close to infinite as a human could get. And I'm getting a new understanding of Dungeons & Dragons. I've already communicated to you how it is how, in my humble opinion, Dungeons and Dragons is a tool for human flourishment. I've already communicated to you ideas about identity and ideas about narrative. What I'm starting to get a view of as I go deeper into Legos and Lego combining with Dungeons and Dragons, these aren't toys. Like, these are we use Dungeons and Dragons to model identity and to create new paths through human narrative, right? Lego is modeling the world. Lego is literally modeling the world, and it's doing it with the concepts in our head, and it's doing it with concepts in our world, and it's free of intellectual property issues, right? Like, actually, it's not free. It forms the exact same relationships with intellectual properties that Dungeons and Dragons does, right? Dungeons and Dragons has, is saying, hey, Forgotten Realms, Arcavios, Fortnite. Like, here's the planar bridge, go from 1 to 1 to 1 to 1, right? Like, and you're like, wait a second, does that mean Batman can meet Elminster and Professor and Liliana? Yes. Yes. And Legos is right there, right? Like, it is like, yes, Jim from The Office can hang out with Spider-Man, and they can both talk to Scooby-Doo, right? Like, and it is transformative. But what really got me there was once I stopped and I really thought about this, I was like, what is Dungeons and Dragons? The more I thought about it, the more I realized Dungeons and Dragons is a bridge. It is a bridge. I think that is the best way to think of it. And what Lego is opening my mind to is that it's a bridge. And a bridge connects on both ends, right? This is really important to think about, right? So a bridge connects on both ends. And so where does Dungeons and Dragons bridge to? It bridges to narrative. It bridges to identity. But here's the new Lego revelation. Dungeons and Dragons bridges to language. And I'm just going to give you one glimpse of what I mean by this today, but I think it's much larger, right? And I'm continuing to explore in this vein. So what I'm seeing right now is I've used Dungeons and Dragons, I've used Legos to reduce my runtime on Dungeons and Dragons from 1 hour. And what I realized is I can accomplish more in 1 hour using Legos and Dungeons and Dragons than most dungeon masters can do in 4 hours. I cover more ground in an hour than they do in 4 hours. And the reason why is this visual language, right? The hit points are visually represented. You can see what the species is. You can see what the species is. You can see what the class is, right? You could see the backgrounds. And the one thing that has escaped me, right, was the skills. How do I represent the skills visually? And I figured it out, right? And I'm moving to implement it. And it took so much strain, right, that I realized what I'm doing is I'm using visual language. I am using visual language to massively speed up Dungeons and Dragons, right? And it's astounding. I realized the bridge is coming from Lego back to D&D, right? But then and that's here. And I'm dealing with that now, right? But then I'm like, wait a second, Dungeons and Dragons is doing all these things with identity, all these things with narrative. Is it setting a window to view a new language that Dungeon Masters and Dungeons and Dragons players specifically speak? And so I'm sorry to be kind of cryptic about this, but the idea, so one, just let me say this very clearly. Lego specifically allows a visual language to be set upon Dungeons and Dragons, and literally thousands of pages of high complex lore, high complex mechanics, can be communicated financially cheaply, right? You could, first of all, Lego, you could not do this with every minute. If you got every miniature Reaper ever made, every miniature Wizards of the Coast ever, Whiz Kids ever made, everything, and if you got every Dwarven Forge set, you could not even remotely approach what's possible with Lego, right? And the thing with Lego is it's so expansive that the pieces, that's the other part, is I represented all 35 species and all 12 classes with Legos, right? But then as I was doing it, I was coming across pieces that I have built new classes for simply because the Lego pieces I found were so inspiring, right? And it's the same thing. The canon is bidirectional. Soon we're going to have the canon is bidirectional, right? We're going to have a dragon that has a specific form, a specific size, and a specific relationship to the official D&D miniatures, right? And so it's pushing, in my humble opinion, canon back into WotC's material. And they are leaving their canon incredibly open, right? And you could see why, right? George Lucas, he did this, and tons of authors came and just played in his world, right? Whereas J.K. Rowling is like, like really clutched and very protective and didn't allow her canon to be touched. And you could see right now, Harry Potter's in a lot more trouble than Star Wars, right? Star Wars has got 3 shows on the air right now, at least, right? 20 movies, right? There isn't even a hint of another Harry Potter movie showing up, and the last trilogy is utter junk, right? So it's interesting, right? But overall, we reach this point, right, where Lego is specifically setting into place this incredible milieu, right? And it is sending canon back, right? And the moment the official product comes here, literally every single Lego that's ever been printed will be, you will walk your official, D&D miniature right over into every other set that's ever been built, right? Provisioning storytelling right there, right? That's astounding. That is astounding, right? And right now, I see this possibility. It's already happened. I've done it, right? Of using a visual language to massively speed up Dungeons and Dragons and make it much faster, right? But also the parts and the innovation and the intelligence that's already been spent on Lego. That innovation it's going to hit like a tsunami on Dungeons and Dragons, and I really think and I don't think it was an accident. I really think Lego and D&D. I think D&D went to, I don't know who went to who, right? And they were like, you guys got a multi-billion-dollar franchise coming out, right? You're spinning up a new D&D cinematic universe, correct? And they're like, yes. And they're like, all right, bet, let's get this done, man. And Lego it is a near peer, right? I thought it was just this will be cute, use this to represent some. You have no idea, right? It's going to transform miniatures and terrain forever. Right, you could chuck your Dwarven Forge. You'll never need it again, right? And there's just so much more you can do, and you can do it so much better with Lego. Same thing with miniatures. Hero Forge, forget it. The economics of it and the possibilities of it is astounding. D&D is a bridge to identity, narrative, and language, and we're going to talk about this more in the future. Appreciate your patience. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.